Hey monsters, I'm Lynne D. Johnson, Content Director of AdMonsters, and the AdMonsters team is back for another week of a wild ride of this Google versus the DOJ trial. I am joined by my fellow editors, Yakira Young and Andrew Byrd. This week, Google on trial. We're deep into week 3, and let me tell you, the plot has only thickened. If you've been following along, you know we've already seen some heavy hitters testify about Google's chokehold on the ad tech ecosystem. But this week, it's all about the ad tech spaghetti. Yeah, so we'll all be probably touching on that ad tech spaghetti because it's a tangled mess. Google came out swinging with their defense, but right, it's kind of like right. Their attempt to simplify things actually ended up reinforcing how much control they have. So the Amos' team, we're about to dig in deep, and it looks like, Andrew, we are joined by Solange Knowles here. Now, is that Solange Knowles' seat at the table? Because that could represent publishers trying to get a seat at the table.
Yeah, I mean, no, this is not a seat at the table. I do love the album. This is her second one when I get home. But yeah, I can definitely agree. We do need a seat at the table with these publishers, definitely.
Yeah. So, Andrew, you're digging into some polarizing testimonies this week. I mean, I think whenever these Google people get up to speak, it's polarizing, right?
Definitely,
The
definitely.
Yeah. So what do you have for us, Andrew?
Yeah, one of the testimonies that I think was very controversial last week was Mark Israel, who testified on Google's behalf. One thing he was talking about is that Google's defense against federal antitrust claims argues that regulators are misrepresenting the competitive landscape by focusing too narrowly on open web display advertising. He also thinks that they're overlooking competition from social media platforms like Facebook and TikTok, as well as e-commerce giants such as Amazon. He emphasized that Google shares of the overall online advertising market is just 10%, a significant drop from the 15% from a decade ago. He's also saying that a shift in ad spending away from desktop and laptop computers, where Google's influence is concentrated toward mobile and app-based advertising. However, he maintains that Google investments in ad tech both benefit publishers and advertisers, which I know some people have said there's been a mix. I know we kind of talked about some of the small businesses who found a lot of benefit from Google's ad display business. But I know a lot of people, especially Ariel from Check My Ads, she's kind of checked him a little bit on what some of the things he was talking about. She was basically saying that she thought his defense would be good if it focused more on publishers, but he felt like it ignored publishers and kind of dissuaded some of the stuff that he was saying. He was saying that throughout the case, Google's witnesses, including markers, are focused on downplaying the harm to publishers, portraying ad tech as unified two-sided market benefiting advertisers pretty much. So there's basically saying like she kind of left publishers out. So what are you even saying at this point?
Right, but you know what? To that point, that's interesting you brought up Ariel, because I saw a post from her on LinkedIn where she was like the star expert witness. I have to read this post here that I just pulled up from her. It went off the rails. This was like 3 days ago. She posted this. She hopes that marketers are taking note of this. This is what she posted. We get a hypothetical about a small local newspaper switching from AdX to illustrate the point that the alleged 2.6 revenue loss isn't really 2.6%. It was an average that doesn't account for what would happen to individual publishers, specifically small publishers. And Israel is assuming most of this demand can be replaced. Israel says that specific publishers might want to stick to what they already use. And she said on redirect, Isaacson made it worse by asking something along the lines of, how many small independent publishers are left? And then Israel said fewer. So
Yeah,
boom. I mean, that's like backfire, like big
yeah.
time backfire on his testimony. Yeah. What do you think of that, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think what Ariel is kind of pointing out is that you're kind of missing the whole point here. That even though there are some publishers who are saying like Google's ad business is beneficial to me, it's really only that way just because Google made it that way. I know one of the other testimonies was from Kenneth Bloom from BuzzFeed, who said he got a lot of advantage from GAM and their unified pricing rules. But I know Ariel kind of pointed out in her summary that he seemed a little nervous in his demeanor just because he kind of was speaking well of Google because they're so reliant on their tool. So I definitely think there's a double-edged sword there, definitely.
Yeah, and I get the comparison to the social media platforms, right? But they're all walled gardens. They're all platforms, and I don't think that the same value that Google holds for publishers that the social media platforms do. For advertisers, maybe, but not for publishers, right? Yeah. What else, Andrew? What else? What other tea do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for me. The only thing I could really say is that, you know, there is kind of this double-edged sword of some publishers are kind of relying on Google's ad business. And I guess Israel does kind of make a good point that there are other wall gardens, but just because other people are doing it doesn't necessarily make it right. So it just kind of depends on, you know, where people sit on the side of the line.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yakira, what stood out for you this week? Because, we all already know Ad Exchanger is covering this, Marketecture is covering this, Check My Ads is covering this. So the value we want to bring is just like what stood out for us and like what may impact publishers. So Yakira, what were the kinds of things that stood out for you from week 3?
Not much. I will say 3 weeks went by very quickly. I don't know if you guys saw that a Google project manager called Sarah stupid, which I think is crazy. Yeah, I was actually talking to her about it at Programmatic IO, and I was just telling her, like all press is good press. I mean, the fact that you're being mentioned in this trial is major. But yeah, I saw that like when I was looking over some of my research, preparing for this. A lot of the testimonies, in my opinion, they're continuing to be contradictory. So, Adam Stewart, head of US sales at Google, at one point he stated how Google, competes with Facebook, Amazon, and Criteo. But then he said he's not really familiar with Criteo's business. So it was just weird that he said that. Andrew, back to what you were saying about how Israel was saying that the government is really focused on like display ads. I think like another thing he mentioned was like how, display was a big thing on web pages back in 2013, but by 2021, like that had pretty much all shifted. Um, then the professor expert from Yale, Judith, I hope I say her last name right, Chevalier. When she talked about this whole idea of full stack revenue share instead of focusing specifically on ad tech rates, because that shed more of a light on that the Google to Google take rates, sorry, not ad tech rates. The Google to Google take rates were cheaper, obviously, than the take rates of the outside sources, thus showing, their competition and how they monopolize things. I saw some other numerical things there. So, DV360 obviously has its price. It includes data fraud and brand safety, which is like extra for the trade desk. They would have to pay. And that ad tech spaghetti, Lynne, that you mentioned, I mean, it just really shows how much of the ecosystem that Google actually controls. But especially on the sell side, it's like publishers have to go through way more channels to get to buyers, whereas way more Google channels where buyers don't have to go through that many. But on the publisher side, it was like 4. So. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Yakira, yeah, to your point, Google put that out there like that was going to help them, but to me, that just made ish a lot worse, right? It, like I said earlier, the plot thickened. That helped the plot to thicken some more because it made people question them even more. And it was also like a lot of people were on big WTF and WTH when they first saw that image because it was like, what is this thing, right? So yeah, any more you have to say there, Yakira, before I like wrap us all up for the week?
No, not really, other than, I'm happy that we are getting a little break from this. And yeah, we better be ready to do it again around Thanksgiving, and we're all gonna have something to talk about at the tables with our families who, as people in the industry say, know nothing about what we do.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Do you ever try to talk to your family about this stuff? Has
They
anyone
think I
ever
sell
tried?
ads. They want me to help them with their business, their entrepreneurial businesses and get ads. I'm like, I don't sell ads. I just cover the industry.
Yeah. With me, everybody just thinks I can fix their websites. That's like the biggest thing, right? Or help them earn revenue, to your point. Yeah.
But I don't think
But
that's unusual for you because you do have a lot of digital experience. So I can see why people would think you could fix their websites.
not today's websites. Maybe yesterday's websites,
Yeah.
not today's websites. But yeah, to wrap up the week, these highlights that you guys shared were, really important for us to pull out for publishers. But there's a few more takeaways. Digging back into the spaghetti, um, the ad tech ecosystem is very complex, right? And Google is not just part of the system. Google is the system in so many ways. So, and calling all the shots. And, that's what we keep saying every week. The other thing that's interesting to me is the internal emails. The internal emails are here again. We saw more evidence that Google executives acknowledging the strategic advantages they gained through acquisitions like DoubleClick. You could practically hear the DOJ cracking their knuckles as they laid these documents out, underscoring the point that Google's market power isn't just a byproduct of good business, but of calculated maneuvers to stifle their competition, right? And this judge ain't playing. I always mess up her name. Is it Brinkema? Brinkema? How do you pronounce it? Anyway, really not playing, not letting Google off the hook, outright questioning the credibility of some of their longtime employees who came to the stand, saying that their testimony may have been tainted or highly questionable. So that's a big blow to Google's defense team. They've been leaning on these witnesses to frame the narrative for them. And I think also, like, something that came up was transparency. And it's like when we talk about Google, transparency is a misnomer. Like, like transparency does not exist. Um, I think there's a glaring lack of transparency when we're talking about Google. The access to the trial documents has been restricted. Key testimonies are happening behind closed doors. The black box situation makes it even more difficult for the public to really grasp what's at stake here. And let's not forget, whatever happens in this trial is going to echo across the entire industry. The other tech giants are watching, taking note. I know at Programmatic IO, I heard a lot about Trade Desk and how the Trade Desk is moving and how people are starting to feel a little uncomfortable. Like the Trade Desk is mirroring some of Google's moves. People are feeling like, I don't want to say it out loud, but the Trade Desk might want to sit down and take some notes at this trial to make sure that they're not going to make the same mistakes that Google made. Any other things you guys want to add? Any other insights, thoughts before we wrap this all up for the monsters out there watching?
I think they brought your guy Wheatland back towards the end to kind of
Oh,
challenge Mr. Israel there.
oh yeah. What did he say? Do you have notes on this?
So I don't really remember the details, but I do remember seeing that he was back. To be honest, I was hoping that you had the
That
details.
I would have that? Oh,
That was your portion of the discussion, when we talked about him. But
yeah.
we can include him in the recap, the written recap.
Yeah, let's do that for sure because yes, and you're right. I have been putting on the publisher hat every week and
Yeah.
representing the publisher's voice. So how I missed that, I do not know. But we'll put it in the recap. You can catch this video on YouTube. It will also be on admonsters.com, and we will have clips all over social media. thanks to Yakira Young here, who's chopping up those clips for us. So there you have it. Week 3, tangled mess of spaghetti that none of us would want to eat, a bunch of power plays, and some serious courtroom drama. And Google's defense is just spinning its wheels while the DOJ is tightening the net tighter around Google's ad empire. I saw a poll on LinkedIn that AdTech God put up, and he said, what do we think is going to happen next? I totally forgot about this poll. And the majority of respondents are saying that they think that Google is going to have to split up. I put our own poll on the AdMonsters Slack community that's private to publishers who have attended our publisher forums. And it's funny that there's a half and half view of whether they'll have to split up or if Google's going to just get out of this like they've gotten out of everything else. I'm curious, what do you guys think?
I mean,
I think they're going to split up. Yeah. Otherwise, this would all just be a waste of our time.
I would say I agree. I'm leaning toward the side they're going to split up. Maybe I'm just because I've been focusing so much on Ariel's point of view, and she's been kind of trashing Google's defense, but it just kind of seems like they're not on the winning side right now.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it would only make sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whatever happens, this is a wake-up call, a clarion call, as some might say, for the entire ad tech ecosystem, right? So there you go. That's AdMonsters highlights for the week.